Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, they're out on assignment, but I have the other great team that gets it done on Sports Rap. That is AD Drew, who's here with me in Atlanta. And we got Brian Forford that's going to play the role and get it done as well. With that being said, I just was able to get out of Houston, so I want to say prayers to all those affected by the storm. A lot, including myself, houses are without electricity. I actually sent my wife and son to Waco, to my parents' house, so they're safe. We will have to get groceries. I think my wife was upset because she bought all the groceries just for the storm. Now that's gone. So
you gotta have coolers for days like that. Dr. Cavil,
so we do have a big cooler,
So at least to me.
Yeah, we had generator and all that. Generator wasn't working, so I got to go get another generator. Anything. So I got out Sunday night, flew to Dallas. I stayed a night in Dallas, then got out on Monday to get to Atlanta. So I've been here since Atlanta. Still doing my dean work, so I'm calling everything, getting updates from the provost and the president's office, making sure all the faculty are aware. So we've been closed to let you know how things are affected down there. We have been closed Monday and Tuesday, and now just got the message, and I sent that out before the show, that we'll actually be closed tomorrow. During the summer months, we don't have Friday, so it's one day. I wouldn't be surprised if they close up the week down and let it start up. It's intriguing when you talk about being the dean and the academic side, you being, a professor, grades were due for the first time in on Tuesday. So we have to push that, separate that, because while we had some professors that had their grades in before they moved around, other professors don't have electricity to get grades in. So we're going to have to make means to make that happen. But we're here. We're going to give you a show. We're going to get into it. We got some news. We have some tragic news that I want to get out here first before we get into some of the meat while we're here in Atlanta for the SIAC Football Media Day that kicks it off for the three other HBCU football conferences. Obviously, we have a fourth other conference, but the HBCU AC. I got the G. As they officially change. Do not play football as a league. And they don't have any members that actually have a football team. Think about it.
Florida. We've only got two NAIAs.
Yeah, in Langston.
Yeah.
And they're not part of the league. So their league content is like that. But with that being said, we have the tragic news. Former Bowie State football player, one of the three, were killed in a car crash, as reported from HBCU Sports. Former Bowie State football player A.J. Linton was identified as one of the three men who perished following a car crash in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Linton transferred to Bowie State before the start of the 2023 season after spending a year at Penn State, 2 years at Florida State. Many people know by now, Linton was one of the three passengers in the car, along with the 2024 Minnesota Vikings draft pick, Kyrie Jackson, and the former University of Maryland football player, Isaiah Hazel. Three men were all teammates and former football members of the Wise High School football team that graduated 1 year apart. So I know you all got a chance to talk about this Sunday, so I won't really get into thoughts, and you already shared that. But I thought it was appropriate, like we like to do, particularly on this show, is we'll take a moment of silence before we move on with the rest of the show. with that being said, I'm gonna go to you, AD, since you're my partner right here as we get into it. What are some other news and thoughts? I know the big thing is SIAC, but we're gonna take some major time to really get in these predicted order finish, my predicted order finish, see any surprises, discrepancy in there. Get your thoughts on this. Obviously, you're the SIAC guru. We'll get Brian to get in here and get his thoughts on the SIAC, how it's going to shake out, what he wants to see in the media day, what questions he wants to answer. So we're going to really give you in depth. And be prepared tomorrow. We'll do a live show from inside the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. We're literally across the street.
Yes.
In the hotel there, so it'll be easy for us to jump up, get up, and walk on over there to the event. But with that being said, what other news that you want to share, maybe get into before we get in depth into the SIAC? And I must say, I like the fact that you are branded really well. You know, we had a sign up here, you got the cap. I was able to get my shirt on, make sure people understand, fully engaged SIAC this week as we get into it.
Hey, must be nice. Must be nice to have an embroiderer that you guys know about, man.
Hey, courtesy of Dr. Holloman. Dr. Holloman hooked the brother up back during Spring Sports Championship time.
Yeah, it's good to know the commissioners.
Good to know people. Good to know
they
people.
respect the work you're doing.
Go over there, AD, and grab you one of them hats. Which color you want? Because I had a choice of two colors. So
there you go.
So I got the universal one. I got the white one. I could wear the white one with everything.
Very safe.
Exactly.
Good to see.
Before I get into my story, shout out to the two people whose name are on the show and in the jingle, Brother Bishop and the Brother Washington. I know Charles was still making an attempt to get here to Atlanta. He had plans to be here.
And at this point, he's scheduled to get out. He sent me today that he's scheduled to get out. Yeah. So if nothing changed with the airlines, he'll be here this evening, later this evening.
Right. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. Hope that he's got his family taken care of. Same thing with Brother Washington and G.
No lights.
G-Boom Holly.
No lights.
It's got to be tough. It's got to be tough. That's all I can say.
A little bit of this fence was shaking up.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of what's going on there. Tree limbs are down. Some folks really got it tough with those tree limbs. You imagine you had trees that fell on houses and cars.
Obviously.
Pretty much everybody I talked to, the worst that you saw is they had fence damage.
Correct.
Some people with some roof repairs, where they literally had to talk over the roof. Some of them will have just adjustments. But most of the folks that I know were sparred some of the big things. Good stuff you get out there when you talk about Biden. He's already signed the relief in regards to Texas. It's amazing how governors and AGs they don't have a problem with big government when they state
when they say there's an emergency situation.
All of a sudden, like, yeah.
Please sign on, Mr. Republican, Mr. Democrat. Anyway, let's get to this news, Dr. Cavil. While everybody is looking forward to next week, and I'm going to jump to next week with the SWAC Media Day, I want y'all to pay attention to something else that's happening on SWAC Media Day, and then the following day when we'll be with our attention on the BX SWAC Challenge press conference, something that's happening on those 2 days. Grambling University women's basketball player Brenda McKinney is on the verge of a deposition stemming from a federal class action lawsuit she filed against the NCAA in 2023. In the suit, McKinney accuses the NCAA of discriminating against HBCU institutions through its academic reform program. McKinney argues that the NCAA included metrics in its academic performance program, APP, that it knew would have discriminatory effects on its HBCU members. This is why I brought up those 2 days. The NCAA requested to delay the lawsuit, but U.S. Magistrate Judge Mark J. Densmore denied the request and set a deposition for McKinney on July 17th, the day after SWAC Media Day for all those who are keeping up with it. Coincidence. That happens to fall just a day after a settlement conference that is scheduled for July 16th, SWAC Media Day. Coincidence, y'all. Judge Densmore wrote in his order, while defendant's failure to have completed the plaintiff's deposition prior to the scheduled date of the settlement conference may well be a failure to properly plan its necessary discovery. It is neither good cause nor extingent circumstances.
Now, I want to get everybody's thoughts on this, but I want to level set some stuff. One of the things that's tough about the NCAA, they have not been successful in their lawsuits. So that's something to keep your eye on. That whatever has come to most judges now, just the way the NCAA has operated, they have not won, which is fascinating that they decided not to throw it out. So that's the one that would give me pause and understanding. This is something I've heard about in terms of academic studies, that this is some issues they've been out there. So there's some studies that kind of support this. Two, I've heard that the different law groups were looking at this, and they were just waiting on a student plaintiff that would be interested in sign on and go through the process.
Kind of the Rosa Parks of the situation.
Exactly. So they've been working through this for a process for a while to get somebody in there. So they've had their homework. They've lined up. They're pretty good about it. We interviewed in terms about who they have lined up for the best position. I think I got some calls and never could work out the scheduling time to get into this brief, but this is pretty significant and serious. It's really fascinating to kind of see where this goes. If any other students jump on, the sign on will be interesting. Some things to kind of think about as you look through this. Let me go to you, Brian, to kind of get your thoughts, and then we're going to come back, AD, and just get your thoughts after kind of bringing it to the table for us to discuss. Brian, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I don't have much to add, to be honest. I mean, I think, we talked a little bit about it on Sunday. I think we just have to kind of wait to see where everything goes. I don't have I think a lot of the issues that have been stated regarding APR are well known. I guess I would love to see exactly what specifically is being alleged. What
From what I can tell, what they're specifically saying is that the NCAA went into this and knew that it would have disparate effects more than any other group of HBCUs.
That's
One thing
tough.
that's interesting is because I know previously that a president of Texas Southern University, that he actually went to the NCAA when they first started off the APA rules. And there were some adjustments made because of the concerns he put up then were about HBCUs. This was President Rudley of Texas Southern University when this first hit. And he really hit hard and had some words, my understanding, when he was on that committee, that really were about how this was going to affect those. And they took some automatic relief then. Since then, they actually did some other types of reliefs. They created an NCAA program that helped financially some institutions' APR. So there's some recognition by the NCAA based on this. At least you could argue that they understood that there was going to be some differential treatment in regards to HBCUs. So obviously, not a judge, not a lawyer, but it's going to be fascinating to see how they argue this and what does the judge feel about when some of these things are likely to be put on the table.
So okay. So in hearing that, the analogy that comes to my mind here, and it's almost like you're looking for a smoking gun to prove intent. Did the NCAA intentionally create this program knowing that it would affect HBCUs? It's almost, it might even be similar to an argument, watch this here, that the cigarette industry knew that when they were creating cigarettes, that it was going to create bodily harm to the lungs and other things. Or, why did they create cigarettes? Why did they market them the way they marketed? Did they know that cigarettes were going to kill people? Now, I think it's been proven that, yes, they did know that. At least they knew that there would be health risk, and they still continued to market and sell them. So I guess that, I don't know.
Part of that, and to your point, which is even the second layer of that, once you learn that, let's say that for whatever reason you may not have known it ahead of time, right? But at some point, at some point you do learn that this is a thing, and the question is what did you do to remediate it once you learn? Did you hide the information?
Right.
You really push it out
Cigarette
there.
industry.
Right, right. Which is what really hit home for the cigarette industry is the fact that at some point they knew it, that there were studies out there and they did some of their own studies and they didn't do anything about it. So you're absolutely right. It's not only if you knew from the forefront, but at some point and you learn, did you make any changes?
I'll hold my thoughts after the break.
Okay. Let's get into, well, go ahead. We got a little time. Give me your thoughts.
All right.
And then we'll make a clean sweep.
Okay. You know, I'm looking at this and it almost takes me back to the 80s, Dr. Cavil, when Proposition 48 came up. And that was, you know, you had to have a standardized ACT or SAT score. I believe it was 16 or 18 back then, and I remember it started moving up throughout the years. On the surface, it sounded good, but the unintended consequence of Proposition 48 were the athletes who were not prepared coming out of their high school because they didn't know how to deal with this, were ineligible, had to sit out a year. Unintended consequence. They made adjustments, still didn't make the proper adjustments. And ultimately, finally after all those years, went away from the Proposition 48 thing. Think about that. I think about this in relationship to APR and how HBCUs, when you always look at that 930, how many sports within the HBCU fall below that 930 in comparison to our non-HBCUs. And the HBCUs have tended to score lower than other MSIs, minority serving institutions, for those who don't understand that vernacular. But I do wonder this. In today's woke society, or don't say woke society, depending on which state you're in, with the DEI or anti-DEI, I wonder if anywhere in here you're going to hear the DEI argument that if you lower this standard or change the standard for HBCUs, now you're placating to the DEI movement. I wonder if that's going to come in here and in any type of way. This was something I did not think about Sunday, but it's something that I thought about subsequent to that. And especially as you think about not only the DEI, but the Project 2025 and all these other things that are happening in the real world, us a conservative Supreme Court, if this thing winds up there.
I think that's a good point. I think when you get into it, the question is, will the DEI come up? But I think a further question before that will really comes up then, what that comes up is why did you implement this in the first place?
I think the intentions were initially good and probably made academic.
Well, I think I don't know, I won't say how much it was good, because that was probably what they were desired to do. Yeah. But I know in a lot of ways the movement was kind of after Prop 48 and those kind of things.
Yeah.
The real intention was they were getting a lot of negative press, that you had a lot of athletes that were going, in this case, to these Power 5, Power 6 at the time.
Yeah. BCS
schools, the ultra marketed, branded institutions where you had a lot of them and they weren't graduating.
Yeah.
So this was in defense of trying to get ahead from a marketing standpoint, that the NCAA was doing initiatives to try to make sure that these players were actually graduating. Well, now the question that comes in, was that really taking place? Were these just markers that allowed you to market further? Did it really change the graduation rate? If you look at the graduation rates, that hasn't changed.
Yeah. One last comment. This
significantly
is anti what at least our state institutions were created for, as far as to take those students that may have not been prepared, could not get into a University of Alabama, University of Texas, Texas A&M.
I will say we need to be careful with some of that, because some of those schools later changed their entry requirements. Those schools also, oftentimes, the state institutions, were open to students that didn't meet certain metrics, not including African Americans. Because if you go back,
and we know we need to remedial. We know you're gonna need to remedial classes.
Right, but I'm saying when you talk about Texas A&M, when it was open, it was an ag school. It was open for those Florida State. It was just open for males, but it was not open in terms of where they are now, where you have a very exclusive class, where they looking to be a part of the Ivy type elite AAU American universities or your doctoral research one institutions. They were not originally like that. So sometimes we got to be careful in terms of history of where they were originally when these things started. What's the intent? With that, let's take our first break before we get too lost in this great information. And we'll come back on the other side. We're going to get into the SIAC for the second half of the show. But there was one question out there that I thought y'all did a great job that we might revisit a little bit. We got some general updates, and I thought the discourse y'all had on the North Carolina Central discussion, and somebody in the chat asked to talk about it a little bit. With that being said, we'll be back after our first break, maybe touch on that a little bit, take a second break, and we'll get in a full framework of the SIAC with these key players of the year announcements. I got over to the Aloft and got to talk with the coaches and players, and they did some work in terms of volunteer work, really good in terms of the food bank here. So we're excited about what's going on. Got to talk to a lot of the coaches, ADs that really were excited that I was here and gave me some kudos. So as always, Black College Sports Network is in the house. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is in the house. Sports Rap is in the house. We're going to give you your best insight into the HBCU sporting culture, as well as I like to call it, sporting HBCU diaspora that you don't see anyplace else. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this first break.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with AD Drew here, right here as we're getting it done in Atlanta, and we have Brian Fulford joining us, part of the team. Lonnie Shaw put out there, what's up with athletic financial woes in North Carolina Central. I think he might be talking to Jab as he's from Norfolk State, but in all seriousness, we can talk about these things and get more information out there, particularly since we had an update since Sunday when you all talked about it in the group where y'all really had some discussion. And I thought Brian put a great point out there, and I think people may have thought about it literally when it's zero, but he wasn't saying zero in act of zero money, that there were money coming in. But his point was, if you're not fulfilling the opportunity as the athletic department institution, that you'll bring a company in, and that puts you in a different position when you're negotiating that weight. I think AD had a counter to that I thought was really point I must add at the time. I was reading more with you. That there is something different when when you have the negotiation if one organization is doing all the work, and then when the institution is doing the work. I thought Brian came back with a retort that I thought had some merits in saying, hey, you're putting all this stuff together, so there's still some work that Pete has to do, which I'd like to say is really a great discussion to find the details. And I don't know if we're able to do that. If you're not careful, you get mired in the details when you really don't have enough information to kind of find those things out, which both of y'all were saying that you look into. Well, since then, we've had the former athletic director, Dr. Ingrid McCree, that I thought did a really important update in giving some more autonomy of what athletic directors have to deal with. Many of them can't talk about because their jobs on the line. But the challenges that AD, VP of athletics have in terms of working within the system of trying to better their organization, better their institution, right? And oftentimes as fans, those that don't know, we oftentimes will go in to athletic director and say, you got to do more, you got to do better. But I thought it was fascinating. I know we don't have time necessarily to read all that, but I thought it was important if you'll read here where Dr. Ingrid McCree, puts into talking about how this was not something like the AD just signed off, or as you all talked about, that a legal counsel had to read this. A president, for the most part, had to sign off at some point. And even, I think one of you talked about, if not both, that a board.
I said that.
Right.
Yeah.
Signed off on it.
Yeah.
But she went even deeper. And so read that line just for those that hadn't caught this on HBCU Game Day.
Yeah.
If you haven't, go check it out because it's a great information.
It's a great article. And actually, Brian is the one who sent this to me earlier today. So thank you for sending that to me while I was on the road, Brian. You know, kind of hard to drive and read in the rain. I ain't say that out loud. But one key point in here. The state purchasing bid process engages the department, the athletic department, finance and administration, legal counsel, the chancellor, or the president, depending on what system you're in, but in their case, the chancellor, and the board of trustees for selected bids. This goes for all major contracts agreements to include employee contracts. Multiple conversations with involved stakeholders before approvals are made. ADs manage a diverse population of constituents daily, trying to bring harmony to all. It's a tough job. And there's one other one I want to bring out after we talk about this.
All right. Yeah, and I was just going to say, she talked about it wasn't all just me, which I thought was a really good point. I'm going to go to you, Brian, and since you kind of forward and read through it, does this change any of the thought process that you had from Sunday, or does it add to it?
Well, I'll be honest. I was reading Stephen Gaither's article with the response from Peak Sports attorney.
I haven't seen that one.
You haven't seen that?
No, I didn't see that
part. Oh yeah. That's juicy. Now we can talk about the sexy, like the conversation we were having earlier, Doc. We can talk about the sexy story, or we can talk about the good the story that you got right there. The sexy one, the response by Pete. Go
ahead and give us a little bit so we can be all inclusive and inform those that haven't seen it and let them know where they can go back to HBCU Game Day, Stephen Gaither, in terms of this one to go get the full. But give a little framework about this.
So the Peak Sports representative, an attorney representing Peak Sports, addressed the concerns over recent statements made by Dr. Skip Perkins, the athletic director at North Carolina Central. In the letter, he disputes, he clarifies some of the company views and inaccuracies in comments about the contractual relationship between North Carolina Central and Peak Sports. Of course, we're all the headline was the disputed claims about the 60-40 split for advertising and so on and so forth. Yes, or for contracts. And Drew and I got into the heavy debate about, if you bring in your own, why should you get 40%? Okay. So we're all on the same page with that, right? Walker, who was Cooper Walker, the attorney representing Peak Sports, outlined the actual terms of the agreement, specifying that North Carolina Central retains 100% of revenue up to $100,000 annually, while Peak receives 100% of the revenue between $100,000 and $275,000. Revenue beyond $275,000 is shared, with 60% going to Central, 40% to Peak. Okay, that's the first part. Now, the second part, he also clarified that although the original contract had such a clause, it was amended in May of 2023 to allow Central to raise funds independently without owing a share to Peak Sports. This amendment, signed by AD Perkins, means that Peak only earns from sponsorship it directly secures.
That's very fair.
Yeah. Also,
whispering as you reading it before you said Perkins signed it, I was like, that's under Perkins.
Look, exactly. And
you're gonna put it all on him.
He signed it. No, that's him.
He signed it. Oh, wait, there's more. What's the ad say? Wait, there's more. Regarding the claim that Central has tried to exit the contract multiple times, the attorney provides details of a single conversation on a date in late April of 2024 where the AD inquired if Peak would allow Central to cancel the agreement. This was not followed up by any formal attempts or repeated discussions on the matter. So yes, in the letter, Walker emphasized that Peak values its partnership with Central and holds no ill will towards the institution. The concern is specifically with Dr. Perkins' public statements, which have been circulated in various online forums, publications, and talked about on shows like ours. And that Peak does not intend to pursue legal actions provided the inaccuracies are rectified by the board's official records and addressed in the next board meeting. Sounds like AD Perkins is going to have to come before the board and give some clarifications. So there it is. Peak seeks to continue its collaborative efforts to support North Carolina Central athletics, according to Walker, urging transparency and accuracy in public communications to maintain the integrity of their professional relationship. HBCU Game Day reached out to North Carolina Central Athletics, but it declined comment. I told you that was the sexy story.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Any thoughts after you read that?
Someone got some explaining to do. Someone got some.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Somebody.
Any thoughts you got before we kind of close out on this? Because I agree. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting, and Brian is you bring up the revised money financials of the agreement. I want to go back to something that was in that first article that I quoted. So,
Dr. Ingrid,
thank you. So the contract with Peak is not a new concept, but rather what is industry standard when a school decides to outsource corporate sponsorships or ticket sales or marketing. To be more specific, Central submitted an RFP to find the best company to assist with the sponsorship deal. 3 companies submitted their bids through the North Carolina State Purchasing System. This was a decision made by several entities, our leaders on campus, not just the AD. I think that's probably the second most important thing.
Oh, no doubt.
In this article.
Right.
That they originally got into this was just a walk into the office, then you put a piece of paper in front of you and sign it. They went through the process, and there were 2 other companies out there who had similar proposals to Central.
Exactly like we said, these kind of things don't just happen in the dark or on a whim.
I thought y'all really did a good job of that Sunday, and I think that's the thing that I would like the listeners and the viewers to understand, is that while these may not be things that you're comfortable with what are HBCUs or other programs for that matter, but these are not done willy-nilly. They may not be done at the level that you like to see in terms of percentage breakdown, but there's a lot of things that have to take place. We talked about this, that you can't just sign off on a contract. That's just state law for most states.
At least on public institutions. Private institutions is a little bit different.
And oftentimes, even with private institutions, they have some ethical policies that are similar to that because they're best practices.
Correct.
They may have some leeway, like in states, some states will require that you go with the lowest bid unless you can show some additional circumstances of why you don't want to go with that.
Especially if
in
it's
a private
not-for-profit,
institution,
though,
you might ask for 2 or 3 bids, but you pretty much can choose. You don't have to worry about automatically going with the lowest bid.
Yes.
So even with the private schools, they still have most of these
some type of
best practices and parameters going around where there's multiple folks involved about what that looks like. So I think that's one of the things that comes out of this, outside of what Brian said and what you said about some explaining you do, and that this wasn't just a little AD, that it's bigger than that, that there's a lot of folks involved about that process of getting these things done.
I want to end on this. If we have learned anything since football season ended last year, Texas Southern, Florida A&M, Central, other schools, if it's one thing that you all need to do as alumni and supporters of your institution, y'all need to get on these board meetings and get on the Zoom and follow these board meetings, follow these booster meetings, because all this street committee barbershop talk that you hear, if you paid attention to those meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, you would have known a lot of this stuff before it happened. And wouldn't be out here spreading these false rumors and making these false narratives if you follow your institution like you should. Or if you can't get on it, at least go to the minutes of the meeting if you can't be on it live.
Great points made by all. With that, we'll take our second break and come back on the other side, and let's get into it heavy. We'll get into the SIAC announcements of predicted order of finish and some key players, defense, offensive players, preseason players of the year. I'm fascinated about that. We won't go into depth too far with first and second team. You might have some key players that you want to point out to keep your eyes on. But stick with us. We'll be right back after this break as we get into the SIAC hot and heavy.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
As technology continues to bring changes to the world of education, it's time we also reimagine teacher professional development. Gone are the days of one-size-fits-all learning that can only be accessed at a specific time and place. The Stride PD Center is an on-demand library of mobile-friendly courses that allow educators to learn anytime and anywhere. Our dynamic courses provide bite-sized learning and help educators advance their knowledge while also gaining professional development hours. The best professional development plans are those that include a level of flexibility and choice for educators. Whether you're a teacher, school, or district, visit us today to take charge of your learning.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get into the SIAC. We got the predicted order of finish. I want to kind of save that for last. It's kind of juicy. But people always get excited about where their team was picked. And then from a media perspective, I want to see if you agree with the SIDs, because it's my understanding that while when we get into these players, the coaches made recommendations, but the SIDs were actually the ones that did the selection. So that's a little different from conference to conference. Oftentimes, like in the SWAC, MEAC, you basically have both the coaches and SIDs voting what that looks like, as well as CIAA. But in this case, I'm going to let you do, the brothers, if you would, the pleasures of listening. Who was the offensive player of the year and the defensive player of the year in terms of preseason rankings?
Kylan Doom, running back Lane, was from Edgar, Louisiana. Redshirt senior, was selected as the offensive preseason player of the year. And the defensive preseason player of the year is Michael King, defensive back from Tuskegee, Alabama, who also attends Tuskegee University. And he's only a junior, and he's a true junior.
I know you have a connection in many ways people don't realize with Tuskegee, but are you connected with this guy here?
Michael King grew up, I'm former Parks and Rec director in Tuskegee, Alabama, and he played football in my program in Tuskegee. I want to say, I think he started as an 8-year-old with our program. Wow. And those teams won, league championships, everything. Not just him, but he was a special player with those teams. And what's interesting to note about him as defensive player of the year, he started his college career on the offensive side of the ball as a wide receiver. Wow. Transitioned to a kick returner and then became a starter last year on defense. And what does he do? Leads the conference in interceptions.
That's talent.
And I'm going to say this, given that the Hall of Fame banquet is tomorrow, he may be the best defensive back to come out of Tuskegee since Frank Walker and Florence Drake were at Tuskegee on that 2014 when you had not one but 2 draft picks from the defensive backfield with the Golden Tigers.
That's pretty nice. A lot of good accolades there. Brian, I wanted to ask you this question. Before we get into it and talk about the predicted order of finish, I do want to kind of get your overall framework. You see players of the years oftentimes because of what they do, talent, returning what they did the previous year. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that team is going to finish at the top of the conference in some cases. What are your thoughts in terms of Tuskegee? I think they're likely going to be ranked for most people near the top. Then Lane, probably not. What are your thoughts in terms of players being selected as a offensive or defensive player of the year, first team or even second team for that matter, but particularly offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, even if their team is not likely to be picked to be very strong.
I would love to see the voting numbers, Doc. You mean to tell me the team? Wait a minute. I'm just trying to process what I'm looking at here. Okay. The 2023 Offensive Player of the Year didn't graduate. All he did was move to another school with his coach. But you mean to tell me that player, the top quarterback, first team preseason, is not the preseason player of the year? You mean you gave it to a running back who ran less than 1,000 yards last year? I mean, all respect to the brother, less than 1,000 yards, like 928.
Close.
Close. And 8 touchdowns. Okay. He had, I just want to make sure I get it right here. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. He had 4 100-yard games, with his best day being 138 versus Edward Waters. I mean, now he did have a stretch where, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5. He had a stretch of 5 straight games with at least 1 touchdown, and he finished the season 6 of the last 7 with a touchdown. But did you go see what David Wright did last year? Did anybody see what David Wright? Y'all forgot about David Wright. So what
who was the one singing David Wright's song at the beginning of the season?
I'm sitting next to him.
I told y'all David Wright.
You sure did.
So what you have theoretically done, and I'm sending this message to all of you SIDs who didn't vote, and you better hope the votes don't get out publicly. What you have essentially done is you have given fuel. You've given a gas can and a lighter to David Wright and Coach Keaton. You basically said, nah, we didn't think you were worthy of being the preseason offensive player of the year. The guy who won it last year at the end of the year is not the preseason? What kind of league is this? What league does that? What league does that, Doc? You've been doing this for how many years? What league does not return the guy who is your offensive player of the year? Who doesn't make him the preseason? That's all right. Y'all mess around. Whoever's got to play Clark in the early parts of the season,
around and find out.
You'll mess around and find out. I'm calling now. He may have 2,000 yards in the first 3 weeks of the season. That's what David Wright may do to y'all. I'm just letting you know. You messed up, SIAC coaches and SIDs, because there is no way in the world that David Wright should not be the preseason offensive player of the year. But, hey, it's just preseason, Doc. What do we know?
I like that. I'm going to go to you on this one, Drew. In terms of the first team, second team, what are some couple of offensive people that we should keep our eyes on? Obviously, we named 2 of them. We got a running back that was preseason player of the year, Kalen, and then we got a quarterback, David Wright, in regards to what Brian just talked about. What are some other key players that we need to keep our eyes on, first team or offense, defense, that you said?
And I'm trying, and I'm going on to see if this team has updated their roster for 2024, and they have not updated their roster for 2024. So somebody help me out with this. Does Cavil still play at Fort Valley?
I believe so.
And he's
transferring up.
And he does not make either first team or second team. But if you want to talk about Brian, not giving him respect, he was preseason player of the year last year.
That's what I'm talking about. What is going on in this league? What in the world? Look, I'm just giving y'all ample fuel to walk into the media day and ask, what were y'all thinking? Who voted on this? Because there are going to be a lot of people denying. Watch this. There are going to be a lot of people denying. No, it wasn't me. I didn't vote. I voted for him. And by the time you do a count, you're going to say somebody lying. Half the league lying about whether you did or did not vote for these guys.
David Wright, obviously, if he's not preseason player of the year, first team quarterback. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
No disrespect to the quarterback at Savannah State.
I'm saying it's disrespectful.
But had you heard that name before?
Disrespectful with a capital D.
Have you heard Jake Adams' name? What did Savannah State finish last year?
Yeah.
What did Fort Valley finish last year?
At the top.
Where is Fort Valley in the predicted order of finish, which we're going to get to?
Right.
Compared to where is Savannah State in the predicted order of finish? Jaden, I mean, Kelvin Durham, one of the best two-way quarterbacks that you have in this league, not named David Wright.
You said it all.
I don't have a vote. I don't have a vote, and I'm glad I don't have a vote because I tell you what, I'm telling you who I would vote for. I've already told you who I'd vote for. It's on wax who I would vote for. You know, the question is, who did these SIDs and coaches vote for? That's the amazing part to me. And how do you determine player of the year? You know, it's like, how do you what do you have to have a certain number of votes? I mean, what determines player of the year?
Most conferences, they just slide you in the slot, and then how many people don't return? Those are the people you get to vote on.
But that's the first team, the second team.
SWAC started doing that. If you were finished the season, you automatically were going to be preseason, and then you voted.
And then you vote. Then you feel
like that because this became such a problem, which is why they implemented. Maybe you'll see the SIAC go to that movement. And part of this is probably all the transition from SIDs. Let's be honest. You've been always talking
there
about
are
how many new ones, and so some of that is an issue.
Let's see. Savannah State doesn't have one. Albany State has a new SID this year. Morehouse has a new SID. Fort Valley is up in the air. That's four I'm thinking of just off the top of my head who were not there during football season last year. So
that's part of this. And so we need to keep an eye on this. But overall, I think your points are really well made. And you're right. It gives us some stuff to talk about. If not asking around, which we will, but particularly when we get some of these interviews with players, it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, is that going to give them any motivation, which you probably know it is, but are they going to be willing to talk about it? To me, it's going to be fascinating to kind of see what kind of demeanor they have. Let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side, and I want to get into this predicted order of finish and see what y'all talk about there. Stick with us. We'll be right back after our last break.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. They're out on assignment. Charles is probably on the plane getting here. We'll catch up with him, be ready for us to get going in the morning. But I have my other partners with me, the duo associated with Sports Rap, I should say, on BCSN. That's AD Drew and Brian and AD, of Sports Rap. With that being said, let's get into this predicted order of finish. This is where it really gets interesting. I like these kind of things, right? Because everybody in their right mind can do their own predicted order of finish. Number 13. Let me start as I like to go from top to bottom. Kind of do it as a tease as I tell everybody to do it. Number 13 is Morehouse. No shocker. Number 12 is Lane. New coach, new program, struggle.
Same coach.
With the player of the year.
I thought the new coach came in for Morehouse in terms of...
Morehouse, I thought you said Lane.
Yeah, Lane is number 12.
I'm sorry.
Player of the year that y'all discussed. Coach coming back, number 12.
Can you be player of the year on a...
That's why I asked.
Apparently so.
Okay. Number 11, Allen.
Andre Dawson.
You talking about going from the top to the bottom, top third, top quarter, the bottom quarter, if you're looking at it like this. You talking about a huge turnaround. They did lose the coach, lost a lot of players, including a quarterback that Brian believes should have been preseason offensive player of the year. And so it might be BCSN's Division II player of the year. We'll see how that looks like. And number 10, Clark Atlanta. I'm kind of surprised that they're this low.
Interested with that is the same team, Allen, who was what they finished number 5 in the league last year.
Yeah.
Whose players went to Clark Atlanta.
Dropped Allen down because they lost.
Who finished?
But you don't give Clark Atlanta credit for all those players coming over.
But actually, if you look at it mathematically, Allen was 5. Clark Atlanta was number 13 last year. So it's like mathematically, they just split the difference and put them right there at 10. I'm sorry.
Maybe so. Number 9 is Central State. At number 8, Savannah State. At number 7 is Kentucky State. This is pretty mathematically right halfway. I'm going to stop there to put a foot in it. Are any of the bottom 7, we'll start with you, Drew, that you think are totally ranked too low?
I'm going. Can I get 2?
Yes.
Okay. I've already said what I've said about Clark Atlanta. I think they'll finish closer to 500 in the conference. They'll be middle of the road this year, probably a year away from contention. Pay attention to Central State. And we talked about it on Sunday's show. We did the strength of schedule based on opponents' records from last season. And we have that graphic here. If we get time, we'll get into it. But Central State has the second easiest strength of schedule based upon last year's opponent's record in conference. And they finished 4-4 last year. So you would expect them with the easy schedule, finish at 500, that they would pick up a game or 2 this year.
Good stuff. Let me go to you, Brian. Any of those bottom 7, Morehouse Lane, Allen, Clark Atlanta, Central, Savannah State, and Kentucky in reverse order from 13 to 7. Any of those teams, you can pick 2 or 3, are too low.
I wasn't thinking about Central State, but I'm glad Drew brought that up because I'll fall in line and say that's good. I was just kind of Central State was the median last season. They finished 4-4, and they were in the 8th spot. So where I was going is I was wondering, if you're saying that 8 is 500, because 8 was 500 last year. And there was no, and the difference between 8 and 9 was a 2-game difference. So pretty much if you finished 9 or under, you were pretty much a 2-win or lower win team last year.
Great point.
Okay. So I think what's interesting, I would say in that case, I think Clark is too low because I think Clark will be a 500 team this year. Again, I think there's something to be said about having what I believe is not only the best quarterback, but you have a coach and quarterback. You have a quarterback going to a system he already knows, just at a new school, probably maybe with some few familiar faces joining him on the offensive side of the ball. But at least he knows the plays. There's nothing new Clark is going to do or run that they haven't done previously. So I'm going to say Clark is too low, and I'll roll with AD on that, on the Central State being too low.
I like that. I'm going to give you my predicted orders and finish. But before we do that, I want to give you the top 6 and see how much you agree with the top 6. You already basically tell me there's 2 teams you don't think should be here.
See,
well, let me give them first. And then it sounds like you, Brian, at least one of them is not going to be in here. And then you were saying you would agree with Drew that you're probably right, it's 2 of them. Let's see how much of that holds true, because you always can change. But at the top 6, you got number 6, Edward Wallace. President Faison has already said that they were too low. It's somebody else's fault. And I think they will pick 5 in that one. So
what's that strength of schedule? Has he looked at that strength of schedule? I don't think Doc has looked at that strength of schedule, though. It's pretty tough.
I agree with you. We're going to pull that up right after this. At number 5, we have Benedict. Right. I think they're high.
I do, too.
In terms of losing the coach and all that they left, I think people are very generous to see that they, and I think they got a lot to prove. So I'm interested. That's one team I can see you pushing that. I want to see if y'all agree with that. And number 4 is Tuskegee. When we get into the schedule, certainly you can see that is generous. People might say they may be a little higher than that. And number 3, Miles. A lot of folks like that coach and like what they're coming back. Number 4, Valley State. Number 2, people right there in Albany State. I think pretty much mostly universal about them being number 1. So you're talking about having a monkey on your back in terms. Most people, there are a couple people out there that make an argument. I'm not saying that. But this, for the most people, a lot of folks like what Albany State. Even if you don't have a number 1, you probably have 2 or 3. So with that being said, I'm going to start with you this time, Brian, and come back to you, AD. What are your thoughts in the top 6? Are you still in the same framework? There's a team or 2 that you want to put out of this. And if so, what is that team or 2?
The SIC is so predictable. I mean, it is because y'all so predictable. It's back to the same 4 schools that we're familiar with from, Benedict coming on the scene and doing what they did was sort of, remember the first year Benedict went unbeaten, they weren't predicted to finish 1 or 2. They kind of, they were the
500 team predicted.
They were the 500 team that caught, that supposedly, if you want to say caught everybody surprised. Then the following year,
they caught everybody so much by surprise, they were on 5 different homecomings that year.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And then everybody realized, oh no, that's a good team. We're gonna vote them number 1, and they backed it up. So now what happens? Benedict falls back into what they were prior to coming into the 2022 season. So, and what that means is the standard is the standard in the SIC. Albany State, Fort Valley State, Miles, and Tuskegee. I just, I kind of question the order of it. I told you, I knew Fort Valley would be one of the top 2 teams. I wasn't surprised by that. And I think for Tuskegee to be 4 is a little bit surprising to me. I at maybe 3, we're talking 3 difference between 3 and 4. We're talking semantics, right? But basically, essentially what that's saying is Miles will beat Tuskegee because it came down to a game a year ago, right? Between all of these
teams. That game.
Right. It came down to a game between all of these teams that finished 6-2. So that's essentially what they're saying. And I don't think that's going to happen this year. So I would at least have Tuskegee 3. Me personally, I probably have Fort Valley as the number 1 team and Tuskegee number 2. That's how I would vote if I had a vote. But there's a reason they don't let a guy like me have a vote.
Good one. AD Drew, where are you in terms of top 6? So let me ask this. Make sure you clear. I didn't clear this. Which of the top 6, who are you putting out?
Benedict.
Got it. Right. Where are you in terms of your top 6?
Fort Valley. Albany State was lucky to be in their championship game last year.
Mm-hmm.
Fort Valley blew a 4th-quarter lead against Albany State in the Fountain City Classic. Fort Valley should have been the representative to go against Benedict in the SIAC championship game. Mm-hmm. The only reason, even if Fort Valley wins, if Tuskegee beats Miles, Tuskegee is in there. Tuskegee was the one team out of the 4 that was going in on that day that controlled their own destiny, and they laid it in. Point blank, Tuskegee laid it in. Now, it's interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to come down to that last game. The Fountain City Classic, homecoming for Tuskegee. I really do think it's going to go out there. Edward Waters, I think it's the team that definitely ahead of Benedict. Could be that team on that last day. I believe they played Fort Valley that day. Might mean something that they are probably right now. They have the easiest opponent on the last day of the season of all these teams we talking about in contention. Preseason, y'all. Preseason, no disrespect. I think Tuskegee's going to be high. Tuskegee's going to be in the top 2. Why do I think Tuskegee's going to be on the top 2? Only 3 teams on their schedule, conference-wise, finished above 500 last year. If we get that graphic up with the strength of schedule, there you see it. Easiest strength of schedule. The opponents in conference had a .328 winning percentage last year. Who does Tuskegee not play this year?
All those teams.
Albany State.
Nice.
Fort Valley.
Nice.
Benedict. And Allen. They've got the easiest road to get there. Why do I say Central State is too low? Look at that. I've got Tuskegee, Fort Valley. Top 2.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. In terms of that graphic, based on that graphic, this is my predicted order of finish. I want to share with everybody. Go ahead and get this out officially before tomorrow. We'll have this on the show as we break it down. But this is what I decided based on the strength of schedule, based on get the predicted order of finish, based on what I've studied, based on asking you all questions. I do agree I have 13 with Morehouse. I think they're going to struggle. I think there's a lot to prove there. We can take the graphic down and we'll get back to it. At number 12, we have Allen. At number 11, I have Savannah State. I have them pretty low compared to what maybe others think. I think a lot of changes over there, a lot of question marks that I'm looking at. At number 10, you have Kentucky State. At number 9, you have Lane. At number 8 is Central State. Now, this is Dr. Cavil's predicted order of finish in terms of what I get out there. At number 9, like I said, I had Lane. Number 8, Central State. Now, I'm going to get in trouble for Dr. Faison. I got Edward Waters at 7. Benedict at 6. At 5, I have Fort Valley State, so I'm really off in terms of where y'all think.
Fort Valley, that low.
Yeah. I think the surprise that I got that I think a lot of people are not going to get, I believe in Crocodile. I believe in coach. I believe in that quarterback. I think they're going to surprise stuff. I have them at 4, but they would be my surprise to win the conference.
Would not surprise me.
And number 3, I have Tuskegee, which is probably a little lower. I think there's still some question marks I have. I think the schedule is going to put them in a really good position to maybe play for the championship. I'm not sure. I think they're a year away from getting it done, and they might give up a game they're not supposed to give up.
Which wouldn't surprise me.
Right? And number 2, Miles. I like what the coach is doing down there. I think they're going to be in the mix. And number 1, I do have Albany State. I'm in agreement with that. But again, the team that I'm saying keep your eyes on, if I have to pick a spoiler, a sneak pick to get in there,
Who's your Shock the World team, Brian?
Define what is this shock the world?
Give me the parameters. Like Benedict was 2 years ago. They shocked the world. No one expected Benedict to come out of anywhere. Dr. Cavil said Clark is his team this year. Who's your of all of these teams here?
That if it's not the team Albany or Fort Valley,
if it's not one of those 4 blue bloods, who's your shock the world team?
I like what Doc said. I'm gonna go with Clark from the standpoint of they got the best quarterback in the. Give me the team with the best quarterback playing with a familiar coach, and that's the team. I think if we're talking about shocking people and upsetting the apple cart, that's who I'll go with.
I'm gonna go left. Well, not too far left. Actually, I'm gonna go right. I'm gonna go to the Atlantic Ocean, and I'm gonna pull one of the many Tigers we got in this conference, but the purple and orange. I'm gonna pull Edward Waters as my Shock the World team this year.
What did you just pick? You just put them as what? 6th? What did you just say they were?
No, that was me.
What did you have?
I think this is one of the leagues in there. If you're talking about your shot, if you shot, you're talking about a team that's gonna probably get 3 or 4 more wins than everybody thinks they're gonna get, which means that puts them in a position to be at the top.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, to me, what you mean shot is this a team that gives you a 3-4 more wins than what you necessarily thought they were giving you in the first place.
Edward Waters will be playing for an opportunity the last Saturday of the season.
Ooh, I like it.
But they did that last year.
No, they were out of it last year. They were out.
Well, okay, they were out of it 2 weeks before.
2 weeks.
Okay, so 1 week ahead of the last week. Yes,
right.
But that's your definition of shocking is.
But Brian, remember that.
I thought you would say like Central State.
There were 5 teams.
If you said Central State, that would be shocking. That would be shocking.
Yeah. But there were 5 teams last year who had a mathematical chance of getting in the last Saturday of the season last year.
And Edward Waters was one of them.
No, they were not one. They were number 6.
All right.
Hey guys, we got to get out of here. I'm going to tell you this.
I'm sorry.
After you watch O&G Strikes on Wednesday, after you watch Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on Thursday.
Don't forget Game Time tomorrow.
Oh, and make sure you check out Game Time Live.
Breakfast.
Do that.
Breakfast with the BCSN.
Yes. Get that in. And so after you watch that on Wednesday, after you watch Strike Zone to close out your Wednesday night, after you close out your Thursday night with Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Saturday with Carlos Brown. Make sure you catch these guys because they're going to continue this conversation on Sunday night.
We got to get Kendrick on the show. That's what
with much more. They're going to give it to you in terms of that. And look for some big things to come out of BCSN. We're going to hit the road. And we always hit the road. Usually when we hit the road, we're just providing you the games. This time, we're going to hit the road, not only in many cases provide you some games, HBCU games, that you can always get at the BCSN that you can't necessarily get anywhere else in terms of what we're proud to produce and provide you from Roy in terms of what he's always done. But we're looking at adding some additional broadcast and entertainment programming for you that will lead up and be some game day opportunity, also some live game events where we be traveling across the HBCU landscape, the sporting HBCU diaspora to give that. So keep your eyes on that. That information is soon to come. In a lot of ways, we might be kicking that off in terms of the SIAC Challenge. So we'll look for that to come. Kind of as a tease, I kind of put that out there, maybe ahead of the skis, but we'll see what that looks like. Officially, with that being said, thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, the Dean of HBCU Sports. I'm back, at least for the media. We'll see what that means in August. If they're going to give me some time back, certainly I look forward to the fall. We got some big news we're looking at doing the Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We're going to see if we can stretch this out and give you some more coverage, more days of the week. We'll see what that looks like. See if my checkbook will hold that, because I got to see if I can negotiate with some of these folks. You see what these ABs are telling you out there. So I got people like that too, and these folks like to get paid. And I'm not sure if I have saved up enough to put them on the employment list. With that being said, you see what happened when they brought up Roy yesterday and they asked the question. Well, never mind. I don't want to get anybody. Mike and Charles will be back with us, so look at them as they're moving around and getting things done. We still have BJ Jones and Joshua Sims. Look for them to get things going again with X's and O's on the HBCU Weekly, HBCU Nightly, HBCU Basketball Nightly is before you know it, basketball season is going to be in here. But before we get too far in that, we're going to catch you up with all your news and wants on the HBCU. Look for us to be at many of the HBCU media days. We're going to try to make them all. We'll certainly be at the SWAC. I plan to be at the MEAC. We're going to see if we can get somebody down to the CIAA. We'll see what that looks like. Again, we hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed me back in the captain chair. Again, we want to thank you for listening to this Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watt and Charles Bishop. Obviously, the guest of the day is 80 Drew and Brian Fulford. With that being said, check us out for breakfast tomorrow morning as we get you going for your HBCU football media days with the SIAC Football Media Day Hall of Fame banquet. As they're getting done, we're going to get over there and see if we can shake some hands and make some things happen. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Wash and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, as well as we'll get back to our Sunday show at 9 a.m. as we get into the football season. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the lab. With that being said, follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's DrKenyattaCavil, inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on X, formerly known as Twitter. I like to still call it Twitter. It's just what I do. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube. Obviously, the BCSN on YouTube. Many of y'all out there following. Thank you. Shout out to all our lab listeners engaging and getting that information out there. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. With that being said, Brian.
Of course.
AD.
Great to have you back, Doc. Lecture
dismissed.